You can also learn. You can also learn and sing along, Jebo.
All right.
Nyantemba. Hola. Really do medisa, runa banaba Africa. Ridu medisa, baba hulu, baba tulibatu, marina Africa. Du mélang, really do medisa, runa banaba Africa. Ridu medisa, baba hulu, baba tulibatu, marina Africa. Du mélang, really do medisa, runa banaba Africa. Ridu medisa, baba hulu, baba tulibatu, marina Africa. Hallelujah. Du mélang, real living elela, tinama Africa, sibing elela, nina nonke, amansundu nabamhlope, amakosi yase Africa. Awe, sani bonan, siani bingelela, tinama Africa, sibingelela, nina nonke, amansundu nabamhlope, amakosi yase Africa. Yelele, sani bonan, yelele, sani bonan. Molweni. Ewe. Sholoza. Sontaba, stimela, sipumesa, sholoza, masiente, sholo, gule sontaba, stimela, sipumesa, wenuya balega, sontaba, stimela, sipumesa, wenuya balega, wenuya balega, sontaba, stimela, sipumesa, sholoza, sontaba, stimela, sipumesa, sholoza, gule sontaba, stimela, sipume South Africa. Wenuya balega, gule sontaba, stimela, sipume South Africa. Wenuya balega, gule sontaba, stimela, sipume South Africa. Sholoza, gule sontaba, stimela, sipume South Africa. Angizwa, sholoza, gule sontaba, stimela, sipume South Africa. Wenuya balega, 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 gule sontaba, stimela, sipume South Africa. Amen. maar neng disappoint. Yes. Right, ne?
Okay, Sizobia Futi later on. Hope you enjoy the session.
Siyabonga.
That was a beautiful, beautiful set. Thank you so much, ladies. Power to our Mbogotos. We are still on Youth Month. And thank you so much for everybody who's here, who has braved the cold on the last day of your semester. I understand it's the last day of our semester for our students. Am I correct? Yay, guys. So that's real commitment, because back in our days, by the time it's the last day of the semester, I'd be long gone. So if you guys are still here, it means you are the real dedicated students. Thank you so much for being part of this event. Thank you to the faculty, to Miss Irene. I hope she's here, Miss Irene Botta, for organizing the security team, the EMS team, the entire faculty for really, really putting the students forward. It's been such a great pleasure to work with the faculty. I'm Nano Mutibi, the acting head of marketing for the Gauteng Film Commission, and we are here today really to mark the last day of Youth Month. We began our Youth Month celebration as the GFC, working with the youth of because of 1976. I hope a lot of you know about it. One of the things that we struggle with is that Gauteng is such a big province. It's so rich in art and culture, and it's not always easy to bring the various things that are happening across the province together. But one thing that you must know as the Tshwane students is that there's a movement that's taking place in Soweto that's called Because of 1976. And this is an amazing movement. We literally launched Youth Month with them. They launched it with a night walk where they were really promoting safety in our townships. And they literally did that by walking at night, staging a walk at night and stopping at different places where they said that if our women are not safe walking in the streets in the township, then we cannot have a township economy. And so that was how we launched our Youth Month, and that's how committed we are as the GFC to the entire, youth movement. And it's called really Because of 1976. And they've said because of 1976, we're able to have forums like these. Because of 1976, we're able to access opportunities and access the privileges that we might not have been able to access under any other circumstances. So it's a great, great, great season. It's a great time for us. And we would like to welcome our Dean, who's in our midst, the Dean of Faculty of Arts and Design, Professor Nalini Moodley Diar. If you can please give her a huge hand, a big hand of welcome. She is officially our host. We have with us our CEO, the CEO of the GSC, Ms. Kitumetse. You will see her just now. And of course, we have our keynote address speaker, the man who's been really, really leading and who has just championed the filming industry across the country for decades on end. And the most beautiful about him, his youthful spirit and his willingness to always just take on young people and pass on the baton, Mr. Silo Makeka Ncube and his lovely wife, Mempel Makeka Ncube. Please give them a warm hand. We will be joined later on by Mr. Tabang Muleya, who's we all know is the scriptwriter of Gomorrah. He will be joining us very soon. But most importantly, we want today to be an interactive session. So really, I'd like to ask our directors, our stage directors, if they can please just fill up our stage so that we can call on our guest speakers on stage. I hope this is on. Starting with our our faculty dean, if she may please approach the stage, if we may give her a warm welcome as she approaches the stage. Please grab a seat. Next, we'd like to call on our CEO, Ms. Kitumetse Lebaka. Please approach the stage. And finally, our guest of honor, Mr. Silomake Kangube. Beautiful. Beautiful, lovely. And really, this is really officially the beginning of the program. I'd officially like to mark the 20th inaugural GFC lecture officially open. And so the subject matter today really, it's broad. It was very difficult for us to come up with one particular subject, one topic that is the one that we're going to run with for the day. However, I think we all agree that we are all concerned about taking the local filming industry to the next stage. We are all concerned about building brand South Africa film. And really, I'd like to give some background on how we got to this moment. The GFC will be hosting its first Discover International Film Summit from the 18th to the 20th of October. And this is going to be held in Johannesburg, and it's going to be the very first that we'll be hosting. Really, the aim of the summit is to encourage the industry to create networks, to take the South African industry to the level where it can compete with the international global filming markets. We do believe that we have potential to be able to achieve this, but we do also realize that it's a journey. So on our way to the summit, we've kickstarted what we call the Road to the Summit. And we kickstarted the Road to the Summit on the 25th of May, which was Africa Day, where we officially launched our Road to the Summit, introducing our partners, introducing our 20-year logo, introducing the various aspects that will be taking place, including the one-stop film shop that the GFC has just launched. So I will be throwing in you these bits and pieces of nuggets as we go along, but I know people are edgy to hear from our principles, so I don't want to stretch your patience. I know artists, you are trained to be patient, to listen, but I don't want to be the one to be training you. So on that note, I'd like to please call up to the mic our Dean of Faculty to please give us a welcoming and introductory remarks. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all well. As the Dean, I must first say I'm delighted to see so many students on the last day of campus of the semester. I think it is remarkable that you're all here. It's indicative of the caliber of personalities we have on stage and the company. So I think this is a strategy that we should use as a faculty to get and to coerce students to stay a little longer. To our esteemed guests today, Kitumetse Lebake, the acting CEO of the Gauteng Film Commission, and host Kitumetse Mashlangu, the Gauteng Film Commission board member, Ntate Selomake Kanube, the keynote speaker, and his wife, this beautiful wife, Pearl Make Kanube, Dr. Solomon Maloka, the Deputy Director of Student Affairs and Extracurriculum Development. Esteemed guests, Program Director, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome you this morning to the Faculty of Arts and Design at the Tshwane University of Technology. It is our privilege to host the Discover Summit inaugural lecture of the Gauteng Film Commission South Africa. And as we move now into what is labeled the post-COVID phase, we are delighted to host in-person events such as these, which elevate the scholarly discussions about the creative industries in South Africa. Having just launched our alumni chapter, it was evident that this faculty has played a pivotal role in contributing significantly to the South African creative industries. And it is our duty as an institution of higher learning to continue this trajectory. It is also our duty to support the creation of platforms for storytelling that tell real stories about real South Africa. It is remarkable to note that TUT can be accredited with being the oldest film program in South Africa, a film program that provided the South African film and television industry with world-class artists, technicians, and entrepreneurs who are well-grounded in practice and in theory. For the past 50 years, the purpose of the Diploma in Motion Picture Production is to provide industry-focused training with a creative academic edge in all aspects of film production. As the Dean, it's some proud moments for me to recognize, and I think worthwhile to share with you today, a few highlights of some of the notable TUT filmmakers and industry professionals who studied at TUT's film program or at its predecessor, the Technikon Pretoria. First, I want to mention Dion Bieber, who studied film at Technikon Pretoria before relocating to Australia to complete his postgraduate studies. In 2006, he won both the Academy Award and the BAFTA for the cinematography of the film Memoirs of a Geisha. In 2003, he was nominated for an Oscar and a BAFTA in the cinematography category for the film Chicago. Secondly, thank you. Secondly, editor Jolien van Antwerp graduated from TUT in 2011. And in 2021, she was nominated for an International Emmy Award in the documentary category for the National Geographic film Jade-Eyed Leopard. And third, but by no means last, the film composer, editor, special effects artist, and sound designer graduated from TUT's program in 2009 and won the Golden Global Horn South African Film and Television Award 4 times in the category of Best Achievement in Original Music Film Score. So these are significant characteristics of the faculty and the Department of Motion Picture Production that elevates the quality of what students are being taught. What also adds to the uniqueness and gravitas of this program is the caliber of the lecturers that we have had over the years. They are active in the industry with a presence on the jury panel for South African Film and TV Awards, the Writers Guild of South Africa, and various other organizations of the South African Screen Federation. Finally, the faculty is also recognized for the scholarship in the field of screen and cinema industry in South Africa, with having Dr. Annemarie Janse van Vuren, who is a Y-rated researcher and one of only 3 NRF-rated researchers in the country, specializing in researching the South African cinema industry. So students, you are being taught by the very best in the industry. The accolades of all the staff have been listed, but I've only been given 7 minutes, so I cannot mention all of them. I could give you a much longer list, but I would be in trouble with the program director. So let me wish you all well in your journey to the summit and look forward to further partnerships with the Commission as they move forward. I thank you very much. Do you need me to be seated? Because I have a meeting.
Wow, we are so glad. We clearly didn't make a mistake by coming to TUT. I must mention, Dean, that I hope Irene mentioned to you that one of the motivations for us to come through is that the film club, the Tshwane Students Film Club, we actually have a WhatsApp group. It's one of the most active film clubs of all our film clubs, and that is why we felt that it is befitting for us to be here and support the students. I'd like to welcome our ISD head, acting head of ISD. I don't know if he's stepped out, Mac Mohoba. He was here. I saw him earlier, Maybe he's just had to step out and work because we're always working, juggling balls. And I'm not sure I did. No. Yes. Behave. And yes, I'm hoping that one of our board members was meant to be here, but also just while I look for her, I'm hoping she's here. But also I'd like to introduce our head of HR, Mr. Figa Mate. He's also a Praetorian, and thank you so much for always attending our events and gracing us. I can't remember if we also have the head of students, the student movement in TUT. I'm not sure if he's in the room. Would like to welcome you as well, if you're with us. And all the other student leadership programs, please do feel welcome. On that note, I'd like now to move on to call our CEO on stage, Ms. Kitumetse Lebaka, who will grace us with really the contextual framework of what informs this lecture, what informs the direction of the GFC, and most importantly, the next generation of filmmakers. Please give her a warm hand.
Thank you very much, Nano, and good morning to everyone. Oh, wow. Good afternoon. Wow. Good afternoon. And it's really great seeing the number of faces that we are seeing here and you having graced this program. We really don't take it lightly. You could have been anywhere, but you chose to be with us today. Prof, thank you very much for what you've just shared with us. And it is really testament that South Africa is a breeding ground for talent. Not talent just for our country, but international talent. And I hope that you have been inspired or will take that as a seed, particularly as artists, because we understand that the market is just beyond South Africa, it's just beyond Gauteng. So when we groom and support and develop our artists, filmmakers, we understand that this is bigger than us. This is indeed our inaugural lecture where we discuss film and the future of film. And what a better way and what a better place to start right here in TUT, where there has been proof of talent that has been produced. We've just moved past the COVID era, and a lot has changed in our industry from 2020 to date. How the audience, how people consume content has changed. It's different than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. People are watching content that they've never watched before. We're now seeing the rise of the YouTubers, the TikToks, and it tells you that there's great competition for content that is fresh, that is relevant. We also know that recently Netflix has made an announcement to make a move into gaming, which is now a sign that the technology and film are merging together. We may possibly see in the next coming years an integration of gaming into a film franchise, or perhaps a movie experience with a driverless car. The storytelling opportunities are endless, and these are afforded by the technology. The integration of new technology into movie business will therefore indeed indicate that there is a new rise of skills that is required. And from an academic perspective, we need to be ready. We need to make sure that how we are skilling from the entire value chain for film is different, that we can be global players, create jobs in the film industry, as well as grow the film industry. The potential of the film industry in Gauteng alone is a R1 billion market. But we have not yet tapped into it because we don't have the infrastructure that is necessary to do that. But as the GFC, we are making headway in the development, partnering with government of what we'll call a film city, a city where you can go in and experience different sceneries, where you can have the beach, the bush, city life all in one. This will enable us to make sure that we attract investors, that more movies do come into the country. It is a deliberate effort that we are making because we understand that if we do not be deliberate in the investment, it's our children, it is you, who will then not be able to experience a better tomorrow. So this is as part of what, as the Gauteng Film Commission, what we are looking at and we are doing. But I've also paid attention to the new generation of artists post-apartheid. How they express their art is a testament to our newfound freedom. It's the freedom of expression. You see this in the stories that are coming out of the continent and the stories that are coming from South Africa. As South Africans, we must be proud to embrace our culture, proud to embrace our rich history. But we also need to be smart enough to tell our stories in a manner that can be commercialized. Because you can have a good story, but if it cannot make it out there, it's another thing. So we need to be able to merge great creativity and business skills into film. With that said, we have seen our own movies produced right here in Gauteng receiving international awards in the last few weeks. I will mention but just a few. Kiriboni, I believe it's on Netflix now. Tando, it is on DSTV. Margarine, which is one of the filmmakers that we have in one way or another as the GFC supported. I hope hearing these news, you can then say to yourself that I too will be one of those producers, directors, or script writers whose movies will make it internationally. Again, this is again a testament that the world is yearning for our stories. Once again, we need to find a balance that is telling our authentic, rich stories in a manner that is commercially viable and that it can resonate with the world. We know through the various movies that we watch on screen, Koreans and otherwise, that language is no longer a barrier. We've seen young artists finding innovative ways to express themselves through art. From a music perspective, we know the move from kwaito to amapiano, from the fine arts perspective, you have seen how the art has made it international. The likes of Nelson Makamo is just but a few of the people we can just mention. The same in film and television. For decades, during the apartheid era, you know, this industry was led by the white minority. Back in the days, black filmmakers were associated with what was called apartheid cinema. We are right now at a place where we are better advantaged through the funding that government makes, through the funding through GFC, and we need to then take the bull by the horns and take advantage of the opportunities that exist. I cannot leave the stage without saying to TUT as an institution, the importance of skills development at this particular time is very important. South Africa is known for having great talent and skilled crew, but the talent is not enough. We need to increase this. We want to see the international filmmakers coming into Gauteng and using our talent instead of bringing their own talent from abroad. This is something that I publicly and privately advocate for when we do meet with these potential investors and so forth. As a GFC, we have in the last year offered over 30 bursaries. We have in this year offered 23 bursaries. Last year alone, we have injected about 30 interns into the industry. This year, we are injecting up another 20 interns. As a GFC, we are in a process of developing a fund called the Gauteng Film Fund, which will make it easier for producers or filmmakers to tap into the funding in creating their movies. And I'm glad today that we're joined by one of our legends, Ntate Sello, who can share his experiences on how to make it, because he's been in the industry from the days of Boachi Moroka till now. So it is, again, testament that there is sustainability in the industry as artists, but it is what we make of it. As I close, I'd always like you, at this particular time, to encourage you to remember the great South African artists. Imagine how they experience the world, and in your mind, imagine how you will experience the world. Imagine Me Esther Mahlangu, Brenda Fassie, Gerald Sekoto, Yu Masikela. Imagine Tracy Rose, Mary Sibande. As artists, you've got the power to shift that can bring beauty and healing in South Africa. If I were you, I'd be sitting on my seat and say, imagine Kitumetse and the contribution she's going to make in the industry. And you visualize it and you say, I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to make it, because inside each and every one of you is a great gift. A gift that, if utilized properly, can change your world and can change the world. With that, thank you very much, Nano. Thank you.
Thank you so much, CEO. Always just challenging us at all different levels. Please, guys, we are streaming on our Instagram. If you're not following us already, please don't disadvantage yourself. Start now, pull out your phone, go to your Insta, follow Gauteng Film Commission. That's on Insta. on Facebook, it's Gauteng Film. And then our website is gautengfilm.org.za or gautengfilm.co.za. And now for the moment we've all been waiting for. Please, let's just make sure. I'm watching now. There's a couple of us watching. I think we can do better. I'm sure it's more on Facebook. I know on Insta, and I know with students, sometimes data is a challenge. But I think we do, we've tried to allocate for Wi-Fi. Let's just go in and out just so that we encourage viewership. Remember, we're trying to take the industry to digital. So it starts with small moments like these. It starts with us encouraging the culture of streaming and hybrid events. We would have liked to have a much, much bigger event, but due to COVID, we had to adhere to restrictions and protocols. I'd like to now introduce our keynote speaker, the moment we've all been waiting for, Mr. Ntate Sello Makeka-Ncube. Ntate Sello Makeka-Ncube is an industry veteran and is a prominent actor, director, producer, dramatist, and gender-based violence activist. He's one of South Africa's most esteemed performers, having performed in theater, film, and television, both in his native land as well as in the USA, Canada, and Europe. Adding to his list of internationally renowned works, he narrated a 2008 natural history documentary, Africa's Outsiders, about unusually pigmented albino wild animals, which was aired by Animal Planet. Ncube is an incredibly well-known South African for his leading role in the long-running SABC1 soap opera Generations as Archie Moroka. He has created a name that is unmissable when discussing film and movies in South Africa and continues to be an inspiration to many upcoming actors. He is one of the GFC GFOS members. The GFOS program is the GFC's ambassadorial program. And how this works is we have created a pool of expertise in the industries of young and old Gautengers who are really acting as a force within the continent. And really that G for GFOS stands for Gauteng Force, because we do believe that Gauteng is a force. We believe that it is a melting pot. When people come from Cameroon, from Mozambique, from Zimbabwe, coming to South Africa, they come to Gauteng and no other province. And when they come in here, they get influenced by this melting pot phenomenon where we get an extraordinary culture that cannot be pinned down to any particular individual race or tribe. And from there, that culture gets disseminated across the country and across the continent. And because of that, we believe that Gauteng is a cultural force that influences the entire South Africa and the entire continent. It consists of various levels because of our focus on inculcating the film culture from young people all the way to old people, what we call the cradle to grave strategy. We start with GFOS kiddies, we have GFOS youngings, we have GFOS freshettes. You would know this from as a varsity student. When you start, we call you a freshet, and that's what we call our emerging filmmakers. We then have GFOS alumni, which consists of the likes of your Kagiso Mudupi and Tabang Moleya. We then have our GFOS pioneers, and then ultimately we have our GFOS legends, which consist of Ntate Sello Makeka-Ncube, Ma Connie Chiume, and Mam Thembi Nyandeni. And on that note, I'd really like us to give our GFOS legend a very, very big warm welcome. Thank you, Ntate.
Thank you very much. You've got dirty minds, you guys. When I did my matric, some of you were just merely, were not even ideas, actually. You know, jumper defense. Basket, you are. You know, but I had a very, my history teacher, Teacher Mgoma, I was a flamboyant teacher. And now when you are laughing at somebody juggling balls in the air, you know, I was like, did they do history you know. And my teacher, Teacher Mgoma, he used to wear glasses. And he was like, all right, we shall proceed. And, pushing his glasses. And he would say, Otto von Bismarck, a man who used to juggle 5 balls in the air. So there's no reason to laugh. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Program Director, thank you, CEO, and thank you, Dean Pillay, and thank you, students. What is the age group here? What, 19, 21, 21? What's the lowest, 19? Do you have 19? No, 19. 21? Okay, so the lowest is 21 and 20. The lowest is not 21. We have 18. We have 17. Where's 17? Where's 17? There's no 17 here. Okay. When I started my acting career, I was 21 in 1981. You see? You see what I'm saying? It was in 1981, and I started with Gibson Kente. But I had my amateur years started from 1975. I saw a play for the first time when I watched Gibson Kente's How Long. And after that, I couldn't stop imitating what I saw, in the play. But I think before then, I started, when I was still in higher primary, we used to be given, poems to recite. And I think my emerging moment was when I was doing Standard 3. Standard 3 is what, grade 5? Grade 5. Yeah, grade 5. When I was doing grade 5, and my teacher, Mistress Chapel, I grew up in Atteridgeville, by the way. Oh yeah, I grew up in Atteridgeville. I'm a Pretoria boy. Mistress Chapel gave us all things bright and beautiful to go and memorize. And besides, during that time, we were not given we were instructed in mother tongue. So anyway, got the poem, took it home, gave it to my mom, and I think my mom is the one who rehearsed me. Because I'm not too sure I knew what I was saying. But anyway, my mom rehearsed me, and I think maybe the following day or a couple of days after, then the teacher said, okay, Bana, who will recite Kimang Atlaitsang Rastation, all things bright and beautiful? And who raised his hand? Yours truly. And I was like, and then Mistress said, okay, Make. I had not yet, graduated into Kangube then. And then I stepped in front with my shorts, white shirt and a little tie, and I was there. I was like, all things bright and beautiful. All things bright and beautiful. All creatures great and small. All things wise and wonderful. The Lord God made them all. That's when my performing streak started. But anyway, I hope Tabang was going to be here because I'm not going to talk strictly on film, because I hadn't gotten much behind the camera. And I thought I would maybe talk much on, I guess maybe just a little history and on performance and the acting craft. I remember seeing a Oscars and Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon were presenting Best Actor Award. And they had a nice little banter between them. And one of them said, there are directors who know more about lenses and camera angles but know very little about human behavior. And he said, and there are those other directors who know very little about camera angles and lenses, but know more about human behavior. And this award is going to them. So basically, I'm not going to be talking about camera angles and camera lenses, but I'm just going to be talking about the human condition. And in our celebration of, the Youth Month, when the uprisings in Soweto happened, which I happened to be there because I was staying with my grand then between 15 and 16. 15 was 1975, 16, 1976 I was 16. And when, the riots basically happened, I was a young person. And I remember, one was just wide-eyed. What is this that was happening? But to cut the long story short, I remember we were going down Vilakazi Street, and we were going to, because Maurice Isaacson picked up one of my schools on the way, and as we were heading down on Vilakazi Street to Matsike Higher Primary, I think a police dog was sent out to us, and the police dog was killed, poured petrol into was burned, and then there was the shooting and all. And my mother used to say when the house was disorderly, but hey, because go what dansi wa fela melengwana, ba bang ho thola re meleng tate ba tshameka madaisi o kre ngwana re papa ke tlo itaka popo bone mao pop I want ma. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, on our road to Discovery Summit, it is going to be a journey of us realizing the tapestry of culture that we possess. We may have been dispossessed of land, but one thing that we have not been deprived of is life. And in taking on this journey, I'm going to be looking at the salient contributions that were made by those who were truly great. And I'm going to sum this up with a poem by Stephen Spender. He talks about the truly greats, and he says, I think continually of those who were truly great, who from the womb remembered the soul's history through corridors of light, where the hours are suns, endless and singing, whose lovely ambition was that their lips, still touched with fire, should tell of the spirit, clothed from head to foot in song, and who hoarded from the spring branches the desires falling across their bodies like blossoms. What is precious is never to forget the essential delight of the blood drawn from the ageless springs, breaking through rocks in worlds before our earth. Never to deny the pleasure in the morning's simple light, nor its grave evening demand for love. Never to allow gradually the traffic to smother with noise and fog the flowering of the spirit. Near the snow, near the sun, in the highest fields, see how these names are fated by the waving grass and by the streamers of white clouds and whispers of the wind in the listening sky. The names of those who in their lives fought for life, who wore at their hearts the fire center. Born of the sun, they traveled a short while toward the sun and left the vivid air signed with their honor. As I stand here before you, ladies and gentlemen, I am riddled with guilt, the guilt that I should have started what I'm doing today many years ago. And what I will be doing here is what I hope that will contribute to the immediate future. I should already have exhibited, you know, according to many, what I would have liked to talk about today, maybe many years ago. But all is not lost. I still have a chance. And for now, what I have to be is to be a conduit between the past for many of you who are maybe oblivious of it. That past for me, that past starts with Bloke Mudisani. I'm actually doing a play at the present moment, and it's going to start at the at the State Theatre from the 7th. And the play is called Bloke and His American Bantu. It is a play based on Bloke Mudisani and Langston Hughes. They were pen pals. Bloke Mudisani is a journalist of Drum magazine in the 50s. And he had this letter correspondence and camaraderie. Excuse me. You know, when you grow older, air goes up. You begin to make the noises your father used to make when you sit down. You go, And I can hear him say it going, and hear him stand when he, hey! So, but anyway, the play is called Bloke and His American Bantu, and it's about the camaraderie of Bloke and Langston Hughes. And Langston Hughes, you know, during the friendship, actually invited or arranged for Bloke Mudisani to come to the US to give lectures. Bloke Mudisani was also an actor, and but mainly he was a journalist and a writer. And he wrote a very beautiful lecture which I would like to share with you. And that lecture goes like this. Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. In this lecture tour, I'm going to be speaking on 3 broad themes: African literature, particularly South African literature, African rhythms in music and dance, and the problems of minority identity. This opening lecture is thus entitled, Short Story Writing in Black South Africa. The study of South African literature, the study of literature of any country, will also be a sociological study of the relationship of the people who make up this country. So in studying South African literature, we also study South African society. In South Africa, as I suppose, in those countries, in this country, the United States of America, the public image is white. Privilege is white. Authority is white. Prestige is white. If you are not white, you think perhaps that you ought to have been and blame your ancestors for not being so. In a society such as this, where to be anything but white is a curse, a man comes to feel that he wants to be white. White is a standard which all people aspire. With this background in mind, I would like to discuss the shape of the hero in South African literature. The hero in the South African short story is far removed from the standard hero concept. The hero is unheroic and never on the side of formal law and order. The hero performs acts of heroism, the quality of which is measured by how much he can get away with. A hero is someone who commits a crime and never discovered, or someone who steals from whites only and never steals from blacks. You will find an example of this character in South African fiction. I might say that in my own story, The Dignity of Begging, I created such a character. In this short story, I accepted the premise of South Africa that if you are black, you are not expected to be able to earn an independent living. To my black character, Nathaniel, I added a physical deformity. In most societies, a man who is horribly deformed is not expected to be able to earn himself a living. He is forced to be a beggar. So this chap becomes a professional beggar, and he invests begging with a certain kind of nobility. To understand this morality, one must understand the very structure of law and order in South Africa. Law and order are extensions of the apartheid system of the country. The law is used as the machinery for the maintenance and the furtherance of the system. The African feels that the policeman is his enemy. He would never approach a policeman for street direction. He would rather get lost. One last word on the reason that there is not a larger body of more developed works in South Africa. It is because the pleasures of living in South Africa are such that Africans develop what is properly described as a short-term morality. They have to live from day to day. You don't know if the sun is going to shine tomorrow. Everything you must do must be done today. Only today is important. You cannot budget for 6 months in order to write a novel. The short story, therefore, serves as an urgent, immediate, intense, concentrated form of unburdening yourself. And you must unburden yourself. Now that is Bloke Modisani delivering this speech somewhere in 1960 at the USA. And I'm sharing this just to say to you guys, just look at the rich history that you have. I mean, there are writers like Ken Temba, for instance, who was Bloke Modisani's contemporary. He wrote a short story that is famous called The Suit. You know, I had the pleasure of performing in, when it was first performed, I played Philemon. And you look at these, I mean, Ken Temba, if anything, helped me to resuscitate, I think, I was at my lowest end in my acting career. I mean, that is a subject for another story, for another day. But when I performed The Suit, and you look at, and you listen to how Ken Temba has, or read how Ken Temba has actually shaped that story, and even the language that these guys, they were the Model Cs of the time. You know, and the use of language, it is so exquisite, you know, and I'm not just maybe professing or being, just promoting the English language, because for me, as far as I'm concerned, even performers now basically needs to be trained in their own languages. Because I find it awkward that, or maybe challengeable, that, for instance, English actors will be taught to act in English and do texts that are written in English, or even Afrikaans performers would perform in Afrikaans. You go everywhere in the world, German actors would learn to act in German, or French, or Italian, or whatever language that people are, Russians. I mean, I don't know if maybe many of you have read some of the acting books by Bo Stanislavski, who else, Jerzy Grodowski, and all that, you know. But everybody has to actually perform in their own languages. And now I kind of went on a little detour, and I've lost my train of thought, you know. But, you know, yes, I got it back. You must always trust Retlabo. you know. But I was actually talking about the Ken Timbers, you know. I mean, the writing was exquisite. The telling of stories was just out of this world. And they constructed stories that basically made sure communicated the human condition. You know, I think at the present moment, what I find we tend to lean on when we say we are telling authentic stories, we sometimes fall on the side that it's got to have crime and all these things, and tell stories that are talking about the debasement or, you know, the baseness of our morality. You know what I mean? And I think as Black South Africans, we really need to be awakened to the fact that we've got to tell stories that actually elevates and shows the complexity of our human condition. But as I proceed, I would like even also to share, there's a quote by Edward Bond. Edward Bond is a socialist playwright in the UK. And there is a quote that I found from him, written by him, which actually speaks to what we are supposed to be doing. And it reads thus, and it's about culture, and it says, culture will be each individual's understanding of his community and his commitment to it. The artist's job is to make the process public, to create public images, literal or figurative, in signs, sound, and movement of the human condition. Public images in which our species recognizes itself and confirms its identity. And as I said, also one of the things that I find myself now having to play the role of just being a conduit between the present and the past. I am the present, there is a past, but also there is the future, and you are the future. Now I'm already, you know, I'm heading to the Sasa line, you know. In fact, I should be retired in all essence. I'm 62 years old, you know, and I should be like, kids for us. You know, but as a conduit, and I think also, I mean, my generation, and which is this, I mean, and this is made evident by, you know, the writing that is actually happening now. There's a project that I'm going to be involved in, which is The Land is Ours, that I will be producing. I'll be doing a docu-series, and then hopefully doing the drama series of it. And Tembek, you know The Land is Ours? Yes. Okay, all right, okay, boy, all right. Hey, that's my homeboy, that one. Okay. Tembek Toby has written this book, The Land is Ours. You should read it. You know, I will do the document, but read it, you know. And it is actually, he captures the lives of the first black lawyers, you know, in the early 20th century, in the early 1900s. And the very first black lawyer was Henry Sylvester Williams. You know, Sylvester Williams was a Trinidadian, and also he's regarded as the father of Pan-Africanism. And he came to South Africa, I think, in 1903. He was the first black lawyer to be accepted at the Cape Bar. But then there were other lawyers that followed, and that is the Bomangenas, Simang, Pixley Kaseme, Munsiwa, Poswayo. And this is the intellectuals, the black intellectuals that we have, you know, and we have to look back into history. And one thing that they were doing and using was using the Constitution to fight for the land. So we must know that we've not just been the Sainovas, and basically having service delivery protests. We have a rich history of intellectuals who basically stood toe to toe with a white man and argued with him on the laws that he has made, even in the language that they have learned, like Caliban, who basically was taught how to. In fact, there's a beautiful thing about Caliban in The Tempest. But here's what Tembeka Ncukaitobi, what I would like to pick out of the book. And he says, contrary to the explicit desire of European settlers, Western education did not produce a docile class of black elites, willing transmitters of colonial culture. Rather, its products were prepared to stand up to the system using the very tools of Western legal training in confronting its iniquities. And he continues to say, as activists, they used the law as an instrument against injustice. In an age of aggressive colonial expansion, land dispossession, and forced labor, they were not deterred from their goals. And he continues again to say, though their impact continues to be felt in today's South Africa, it is largely an unexplored topic. The focus has been the law and its absurdities during the apartheid era. However, this leaves a gap in our historical understanding of human rights and their true origins. So you realize, we have a task, I think, as black people. And if you read The Land is Ours, you actually understand why we are in the situation that we are in now. Because, and I call, for instance, I think 1910. 1910, it was after the Anglo-Boer War, which was in 1902. And then, the British and the Dutch came together, to discuss, to come and form a treaty. And when they formed that treaty, they excluded black people. And that led even also to the formation of the Union of South Africa. Before South Africa was the Republic, it was called the Union of South Africa. And I, have personally decided to call the Union of the Union of South Africa as basically colonialism on steroids. Because from then on, basically, things just went bad for black people. And it is recorded in history that in 1910, most of the farming was actually done by black people. And it was the richest harvest that the country has had. And look what happens. 3 years later, the Land Act is hit on us. And with the passing of the Land Act, what happened was black people who were owning land became laborers on their own land, and somehow even had to give up even the cows or sell them at a very cheap rate in order to become laborers. So now you understand that somehow we actually seem like we are a nation that is not entrepreneurial, and we come from centuries and decades of just being laborers. Because many of us, grow with our parents not being entrepreneurial, and little now, even at the present moment, we are finding ourselves going, hey, man, you're studying in order to get a job, So these are things I think as black people, we really have got to start thinking very seriously and deeply about. But let me get into the arts. When I did the suit, I worked with Barney Simon, but I'd worked with him much earlier. Barney Simon was the founder of the Market Theatre. And in one of his annual reports, and he wrote a very interesting essay called Why Theatre? And he writes, there are those who believe that God created man because he liked listening to stories. They also believe that we are created in his image. So listening to stories, if we believe as they do, is fundamental to all of us. But telling stories is a circle of respect. If the storyteller, even of jokes, is without the focus of vision, his story will die. If the listener is indifferent, the story will die. If the listener is careful and caring, the storyteller will be inspired to dig deep into his treasure house of memories and talent for the colors and textures that will honor the attention he received. And he continues to say, theater is communal storytelling. The actor approaching his character will journey through the gardens and the deserts of himself to discover his kinship to the man that he will play, to understand that there, but by the grace of God goes he. And when he does, he will move the audience into equal empathy. With his director, he will spend hundreds of hours exploring and discovering the gestures, the reflections, the silences, and the images that best express their vision of the text that they will have chosen to tell. The set and lighting designers collaborate with their own sense of space, shadow, and light. And when their work is least remarked upon in a story that is understood, it is usually its most successful. Each night, and that is in the theater, the story is different because the audience that receives and feeds from the darkness outside, it is never the same. Sometimes the communion is total, and when it is a miracle. It is for these times that theater exists, and it's necessary to the soul of man. Now, let me talk about acting. Shall I talk about acting? First lesson I got as an actor, I was 15 years old from my uncle called Kenny Majosi. He used to be in Delhi where he performed in Sikalo, the original Sikalo by Gibson Kent. And the first lesson he gave me as an actor, first he described what drama is, and he said, drama is the human condition in dialogue and action on stage. That was the definition he gave me then. And then what he did, he broke down the word actor. And he was very flamboyant. He said, A stands for action. C stands for creativity. T stands for technique. O stands for observation. R stands for reaction. All these 5 things you use as an actor. And now, you're going to be film directors, isn't it? So I think you must also make sure that you don't become directors who know more about camera angles and lenses, but know more about human behavior. I later then came to, I think break down, and I think I'm going to give you an acting lesson, master class of sorts. But an acting lesson that is not in the textbooks. And in my 40-year experience as an actor, one thing that I realized that is critical, and I think as a storyteller and even as a performer, is observation. And as an actor, what you do, And even as a storyteller, you observe life around you. You observe human behavior. But I think one of the most critical ones as well is internal observation, which is you as an actor observing how you function. And because even when you act, you almost like, you actually work with, with a certain kind of duality. As you are acting, there's a part of you that is looking at yourself, and you're looking at how you are executing it. You know what I mean? So, in order to know this, organism, this body, this mind, feelings, the beating of your heart, how you react. I mean, for a normal person, when they get angry, they just get angry. But for an actor, I realize that when I get angry, I said, oh, damn, I nearly said another word. That will not fit in these corridors of academia. You basically observe how you are. When I get angry, I say, oh, so this is how I get angry. When I'm in doubt, I like, oh, this is how I am when I'm in doubt. And the thing is, and this is what Uta Hagen wrote a book called Respect for Acting. And there's something the one line that I picked out that stood out for me is when she says, acting, he says, the body has got an innate sense of truth. Have you ever had a terrible breakup, with somebody, or even a fight, and you don't see that person for almost maybe a year, if not 2 or more. But the day you see them, your whole body almost goes into that state that it was in when you last saw that person. You even feel your heart even beating in your throat, isn't it? And that shows that the body has got its own sense of memory, But I think the most important thing that an actor has got to learn is just to make sure that he becomes a storage of senses, so that when you need an emotion or a sensation, you know where to go to as an actor. I mean, there's this other thing where you find actors saying, when I get into character, when I get into character. I think it's the biggest BS ever. You can't get into character. Character is defined by actions. Even as a writer, you will write that he does this and does this and does this and does this. So how do you get into character? I think what we want to say is that you are focusing so intently or intensely in what you are doing that you almost forget other things. But what is it again that you are remembering? You are remembering the actions that you are going to be doing. So where does getting into character come into it? You know what I mean? Because your mind basically just do the work, So in conclusion, I would like to talk about brand, And, we always say that we hear a person says, I'm still working on my brand, I'm still working on my brand. But here's a lovely thing. Your brand was formed long before you even knew that you are a brand. Am I making sense? Your brand was formed long before you even knew that you are a brand. I feel like a preacher now. I don't think you heard me. I don't think you heard me. I will say it again. But your brand was formed long before you even know that you are a brand. And you know how you know that? You know how you know that? When you go to the bank, as much as they will want your signature, what is it that they're going to ask from you? Fingerprint. Your fingerprint. They will trust your fingerprint more than they will trust even your signature. So you realize there's none like you. There's none like you. And I think what we want to say, when you say, I'm still working on my brand, what we want to say is, I'm still trying to manifest what this brand is all about. On that note, I will leave you with my favorite poem, Siyazazi. We know who we are, Reaitzeba. And it goes like this. From the bowels of dubiety, once proud beings then reduced to a corrosive humility, our souls disgracefully packed and sold, time's tick turned the meek to bold, elevating our spirit to a height much to perplex arrogance might, because now, Siyazazi, we know who we are. Re tseba gore bana ba kgwale re tsebana ka melodi. Re tseba gore bana ba kgwale re tsebana ka molodi wa popego. Re tseba gore bana ba kgwale re tsebana ka molodi wa mosepelo. E kwa ge re sese ka mesepelo ya rena. E kwa ge re kiki ka kgato tša rena. Morethetho wa mokibo wa kgato tša rena ga o ne papišo. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, wow, wow. That was just amazing. Nothing less than I ever expected from Tatesello. Always over-delivering. And actually, on that note, I'm not one of those program directors who always wants to repeat or add their 2 cents worth. But I do want to just touch a bit on something that we have spoken about, on something that keeps recurring. And we spoke about this during the week in Tatesello, which I think we need to be conscious of as an industry. Especially when you started, you asked how many, 21, 17, 18, and I do want to keep reiterating this. And one of the streams we have on the summit is wellness. And I think one of the reasons why we had wellness is because we know that people in the creative industry, they struggle a lot with mental wellness because of the stress of the industry, but also because of the way we are wired. But also another element that adds to our stress, and I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that the world has ever committed, one of the isms after racism. I think the biggest ism that we need to fight going forward as an industry is ageism. I find that the people that are older in this industry, and anyway, they're the most productive. They're the people that deliver the most. They're the people that are actually making the biggest difference in the industry. A big example, I cannot keep up with Ntatesello. He's working on, I asked him last time, I said, how many productions are you actually working on? Because he's working on the native Bantu and the other production and the voice. I thought I was keeping up with the voice, but now he's working on The Land Is Ours. He's always working on something. And I do think that we need to start acknowledging the fact that as human beings, if we think right, if we do the work that we need to do on ourselves,
ourselves, we become like a fine wine and actually get better with time. And we need to get it out of our mind that if we don't do things by a certain age, then we've missed the boat, then we failed. Because the reason why a lot of us are going through mental depression, are committing suicide as young artists, is because of the pressure that we put on ourselves because of age. I also want to talk about the knowing ourselves, that is the interruption. Yes, and we need to be conscious that the story that we're trying to tell is that Desilo is saying we're not trying to discover who we are as Africans. We're not trying to understand ourselves and what our culture is and what our heritage is. We're trying to remember who we are, because there was a person that we are. There was a culture that we know we were entrepreneurial. There was an interruption. We are trying to address the interruption of colonialism, which then wiped up. It's like when you get indoctrinated and you get captured and your memory gets destroyed, and then you work on trying to remember who you are, and you'll know that the techniques that work on trying to go into deep memory, deep in your memories of the subconscious, is unconventional techniques like your hypnotherapy and hypnosis. And that is why a lot of our people, young people we see going into spiritual journeys, that's the only way then they end up rediscovering themselves, because you have to do the deep work. So we are trying to remember who we are. I'm supporting that we don't need to get into character. The character is there. We just need to tap into it and remember it. Also, I just want to thank Ntate Sello for the research. He's worked on this for the whole week. He's asked for a brief, and he's... Twice I spoke to them on the phone with Mepel. He was practicing. He was collecting facts. He was collecting data. And it's the gems that you wouldn't know about. You might just see him not having notes here, maybe, or think that he's just having keywords. He's literally prepared and researched. And that's one thing that I ask us as young people to never forget. Always prepare. Never take any opportunity lightly. He could have just been here and winged it, but he gave it his best. So I'm going to open for a quick 30 minutes. We've got until 2 o'clock. I'll open for a quick Q&A. I hope we have roving mics around, whoever is working on that. If not, I'll ask that if you have a question, you can just come forth. And then, perfect. Lihle, are you around? Please just raise your hand. Please, please, please. This is very important for us. Introduce yourself, your name and surname, what your area of interest is in the art, and then ask your question to both Ntate Sello and the CEO.
Dumelang.
Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah. Ke Kaya wa Hamokwape from Mamelodi West Arts and Culture Forum. Yeah, I was invited here by GFC Film Club because at some point, I think it was last year, November, we were at marking Lilengoyi. We call it Lilengoyi, Women's Living Monument. Ne? And when we were there, or I was invited there, then everybody and Alenka Mula to group WhatsApp. So I got it through a group WhatsApp, or there will be a lecture here. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thanking that is a law. But the thing, it's a comment to both the GFC and this institution. Gibson Kent. And the other time, I made a show State Theatre and who really actor Gibson Kent, Peter Mashiho. And Banaba Ijalo never submit. It's our Lord Gibson Kent never submit. So to this institution, please teach the Gibson Kent Theatre. He is from there, and even the book, if the book, you get the book, Gibson Kent, please, as Olemu, you know, he was never funded. He acted in his place. They were never funded. And they were touring the whole country at that time. But why is in that? He was never funded. I think he's the only one, the playwright in Tate Gibson Kent, who was never funded in this country.
No, I think many of them.
Okay.
I think many of them. There was Boiki Mushamme, there was Sam Mangwan,
Oh, yes, Mangwani. Okay. So, but to this institution, please teach Gibson Kente theater. Because when you read history, he came but hey, he came out tops. I don't know he produced that. And the others, and the others, there are many. Even he discovered them. Okay, house. So this institution, please teach that theater. I'm pleading to this institution and to GFC CEO. I think, how many regions do we have in Gauteng? If I may ask. Regions in Gauteng, 7 regions. So, okay, if you have 5 corridors, and how many applications do you receive in a year? In a year, like much as you're saying, okay, we're moving to digital, very inspirational. But GFC must make sure that these students here, after they get their certificate or their degree, their diploma, it's hard out there. He knows, and they must never walk the path that this man walked. It was not an easy path. This man walked. Much as he's saying 40 years, it was full of sacrifices. And you see, there are students here. They must never walk the path that this man walked. It was not an easy path. So GFC, much as you're in Gauteng, that's why if you receive 2 corridors application, it must raise a concern out of you to say, Tshwane, where is your application? Other regions, where are your applications? Fund films, much as you were saying, YouTubers, people went to YouTube because they have a problem of your application. It's very hard. I did it and then I was rejected, but it's fine. No, I did it. I did it. Okay, I did it and I was rejected, and it's fine. It's fine. No, I'm not a hater. But at the end of the day, if as GFC you want to see this industry growing, you want to see this industry growing around this city, around this province, you must fund films. If when they go out of this institution, when they go out there, they must never walk the path that he walked, this man. One, he must, no, please, I'm pleading. And more, I'm pleading with you. And guys, this institution must know when varsities, because again that he was talking about Tembeka Ncukaitobi's book and so forth, and universities about lawyers. Universities, when they were first established, it was for people to, when they come out of varsity, they must be game changers. That's why it's called university, universal city. Because you're not just okay. He was talking about no. If you are a varsity graduate and he was talking about alumni, you must be a game changer. That were not people that we are not academics. We look up to you because the country in much as he has traveled the world in Cuba and other countries. If motoke doctor, he will make sure after he graduate, castrata sahay, there must be doctors. Castrata sahay. Oh, and boruta again, okay. Holy doctor, this is what you do. So, you're not just students or okay. You create a film degree that just go out and then go SABC, go Mereko. Holzwa kamo. I've been here for 4 years, for 5 years, so it's not for waste. Heki itswamo, akolola space le ntato. Nrada ntato, ki botse GFC hore fandang ntato. Because we don't have to fight space. Because as a varsity graduate, I'm a game changer. That's what we want from as students. You are not okay. I'll talk. But anyway, what I'm saying, thank you, GFC. Please, this man must not fight for space with us. He's an ambassador, yes, and then make sure his documentary that he was talking about, you guys fund it. You guys fund it, please. We must not fight space with this man. Thank you.
what mom was.
Sorry, we're going to continue. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome our board member, our prestigious board member, Mrs. Kitumetse Mahlangu, if I'm correct. So please just know that you are supported. She's here. Some of the questions you can even now direct to her, because now what the CEO can cover, she's here to cover. So thank you so much, ma'am, for coming through. We really appreciate your presence. And on that note, we can take the next question. That Desilo, maybe you can respond to 3 questions at a go. Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, because I didn't believe this moment would ever happen.
Thank you.
Ever.
Thank you.
And it took me 21 years to get here, to answer my calling, to answer my spiritual calling, and my spiritual calling as a poet and as a filmmaker. And I was always trying to figure out why I wasn't happy at this school and what they were teaching us that I wasn't happy about. I went out and researched myself. Where did African film start? It started in Egypt. I don't learn that at this school. So the fact that you were speaking about the history of our people, of African artists, it makes me so happy that we're here with the GFC. Because I was at the GFC conference last year. I wrote a poem about how I was not happy. I wrote a poem about how I was not happy. And now I performed a poem yesterday about how I was not happy, but I learned about why I wasn't happy. And now that I'm here, and now that I have people here with me who understand, who have to understand where we need to go to move forward as Africa. I was raised by a South African woman. I was raised by a Tanzanian man, you know? So I understood the essence of this country, and immigration, and colonization, and the problems we are facing. So the fact that you are here teaching us is important to me so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one that side. Oh, okay. You can go, and then we'll go that side. Okay.
Dumela. Nakalinda ke Tomo Tsipinyane, and my field of interest is acting, writing, and directing. And nkara to botsang tate sello gore, since you spoke about directing theater plays, how does your acting contribute to how you navigate that space?
Okay, while he's getting a pen, we'll take that other question. And so there'll be 4 questions. Hopefully I'll remember them. And CEO, you will respond to the funding question, right?
Hi everyone, my name is George Temba. I'm doing film. I'm in my 2nd year, and my field of interest is script writing and directing, and also producing. So I don't really have much of questions, but then I just want to request. I'm having a request to the GFC. TT as film school, there's so much that they can do, the lectures for us, but there's also a huge contribution that can come from the GFC. If there's one thing that we as film students struggle with, is having to realize that having to be a filmmaker doesn't start when you exit the institution. So may there be a spectrum that is created outside the institutions for students to be able to expand their talents and their gifts. And another thing that I just want to point out is that I'm not sure, I think we are the only public film school in South Africa, and we have a lot of students in filmmaking that are struggling with funds. And I just want to request that may there be even distribution of funds, because we know that there's a bursary for GFC. But if I'm to ask one of my classmates or across the year groups to say, do you have that GFC bursary? There's some that will tell you that I have applied, but then, they've been rejected. So it raises a question for us as public film scholars to say, how is it that we are in the public film school and yet none of us can attest to say, I have a GFC bursary that's helping me to complete my studies. And last more thing that I just want to say is that this kind of meetings that you guys get to do, it plays a huge role. So may it be a culture that you get to speak to the students more frequently. There's people who are aspiring filmmakers, but they never had the opportunity or the opportunity to stand in front of someone who has been in the industry. So such visits, they also play a huge contribution in having to groom them to be the type of filmmakers that they want to be. So we really do appreciate you for being here with us. So we just want to ask to say, may it be a culture, may it not be something that our lecturers have to stress about to say, we have to organize something for the students. May it be something that the GFC gets to say, we have to make it a mandate that we have to talk to students. Thank you.
And I think that was the second last, and then you may respond and we'll close.
Hi. Okay, my name is Katleho. I'm from the Performing Arts Department. I study script writing. One thing that I love about you that I'm grateful for to see you here is that I'm also not Richville born and bred. So after reading your story, I think I was like 15 or something, I said to myself, so that's one of the things that pushed me to be here where I am. So, and also, there was a flinch in my mind when you said you are a product of Gibson Kenta, which is somebody I studied just now, recently here at TUT, somebody that I didn't know. And I studied him, I think for the past month since we started the academic year. We talked about Doke House, Ray Phillips studying the BMSc and everything. And it is such a privilege to be standing, to be in the room with one of the products, it's a Gibson Kente. And as an upcoming writer, I would love for the GFC to accommodate us as young writers, because I feel like the writing department in South Africa is somehow neglected. People don't actually take it seriously. I feel like we focus much more on the directing and the acting instead of the writing, and we forget that before the directing and the acting, there has to be somebody who brings the story in here and put it on paper, then we can bring it to life. So yeah, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be seeing you today, and yeah, thank you to the GFC.
That's our last one for the day, before we take an answer and close.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll just offer a little bit. Fortunately, I'm not a student. I happen to be a young, should I say, owner of a little news website. My question goes to you, ma'am, in a sense of like, before you give people something, you need to teach them. What is your, should I say, your plan, or what are you doing with the media in the rural areas, whereby like maybe isn't there any way you're working together with them so that you can teach those people at the ground? Because most of them, they know nothing about film. Film is just what they see, the final product. But the inside of it, they don't know anything about it. Do you have any plan to work with the media on the ground to teach those people about these things so that when you give it to them, they know what you're talking about? In that sense, the reason why I started the magazine is because I grew up whereby I see talented people, but because they don't have a step to yeah, the step to step over so that they can be seen and known out there. Because there's a lot of people like now, you know, like it was very famous and good in soccer, I may say, in that rural area, but nobody can see them because they're in the hole. So I started the magazine to put them up a little bit so that those out there they can see them and then put them out there. So I would want to understand, don't you have a plan to go to the ground so that people don't walk the same path that he did go through? Because he was in the ground and then he had to sacrifice a lot to get up there, which took him a long time. But if you get something or some channel to get to those people, I think it's going to be very simple that our talent can be seen all over. It's underground.
All right. Thanks for the compliments. Thanks, Kaya. Even though no one will like a reggae, you know, and to my young lady, I didn't get your name. Miriam. Okay, Miriam. You know, I think one of the things that, you know, I think there's a you know, those who listen to jazz, there's an album by Wynton Marsalis called His Majesty's Blues. And in that album, there's a sermon that was written by, is it Stanley Crouch? Yeah, I think it's Stanley Crouch. Oh, Andre was the singer. Yeah, Stanley Crouch. Stanley Crouch is the intellectual. And he has written a sort of like a sermon on jazz, you know, and he talks about how, you know, artists go through, you know, self-doubt, you know, and all that. You know, if you have an opportunity, I think you can get it even on YouTube. Wynton Marsalis, His Majesty's Blues, and listen to what is called Premature Autopsy. You know, and I think it will even inspire you as a wordsmith. I'm sure it will inspire you even more. You know, I mean, one thing that I remember he says, though we are told to mourn it, we must know that it was a noble sound. It had majesty. That's right, it was majestic. Deep down in the soul of it all, where the notes themselves provide a level of revelation you can only expect of great art, it formed a bridge. That's right, a bridge. A bridge that stretched from the realms of dreams to the highways and byways and thoroughfares and backroads of action. To be even more precise, let me say that this sound was itself an action, like a knight wrapped in the glistening arm of invention, of creativity, of integrity, of sophistication. This, yeah, that's how it goes. You know, but it's a nice, you know, thing. And in fact, when I would be feeling down, you know, and I understand when you say that, I mean, you've written a poem about why you were so unhappy. And sometimes being an artist is a very lonely thing, because sometimes you feel not understood, you know, but introspect and spill it on the page and let it, you know, let it live on the page, and somehow it will resonate in time. Okay, thank you, my girl. And, you know, one of the things that I would say, your generation, hey, man, there are times when I wish I could be young again. You know, there are times, I'm 62, so I would say, let me think like I'm 26. You know. But, Ivana, for you guys, life is at your fingertips. It's literally on your fingertips. I mean, you are the thumb generation. You know, you're on your phones, isn't it? Life is literally on your fingertips. You know, I even say that even to some that sometimes others may not even, you can even not go to school as long as you can read and write. You can actually then end up not going to school because information is available. How to write a script is available on the net. I mean, I did my master's, I did my master's in what, 2004, 2007. But in screenwriting. But I haven't really practiced. And to refresh myself, I go to the internet. You know what I mean? And also, I mean, you know, we cry sometimes we don't have equipment, but we have the phone. It's our equipment. You know what I mean? And I think there are apps to edit and do all kinds of things, isn't it? Isn't it? You know, and basically all you got to do is start thinking creatively. And if you've got a story to tell, we only had the pad and the pen. You know, it is not like this anymore. You know, so, you know, basically, and start being entrepreneurial even now. You know, begin to want to tell your story now. Don't wait until you get out of varsity. And basically, learning mustn't stop, you know, when you go out of the classroom. Life should be your classroom. Every time, you know, there's somebody who said, we are all equal in this world. And you know what makes us equal? We all have 24 hours. It's how you use your 24 hours that makes us unequal. You know, and one thing about sometimes I think as black people, and that's, you know, Malcolm X says, we bark when the white man says bark. You know, and he says, I hate to say these things about us, but it is true. And sometimes as black people, we just like to complain a lot. You know what I mean? And I think that's another aspect that we should look into and make sure that it is not all about complaining, but you try and make it happen for yourself. You know, I mean, for me, going to varsity was like a distant cry, you know? And I mean, you know, there's, I don't know how far back in NSFAS works, you know, there are all those opportunities, but even beyond that, you know, I hold incubations now, and you find, in fact, here's was one interesting thing. And I remember when I was starting my incubation, I remember thinking, one of the biggest challenges I'm going to get is these kids, I audition them, and then when we're going to start the excitement, they're going to be like, yeah. But you'll find like in the next 2 weeks, then people start with their excuses. And I asked myself, how am I going to deal with that? But fortunately, divine intervention came. And I had an interview, the way I interviewed them, I actually found a way where I actually kind of like locked them in a corner. And how I locked them in a corner, I mean, it was just not a long process, but one of the first things that I asked them was, how often do you lie? And the person would say, well, 20% I lie, 80%. I said, okay. And I said, but here's another thing. You know, when you have been discovered that you lied, you realize how difficult it is to win trust. And we're like, yeah. I said, but here's another thing. Before you lie, the very first person to hear the lie is yourself. Because you've got to convince yourself first. Believe in your lie. So that when you deliver it, you are convincing. And they said, yeah. And I said, but now, if it is difficult to win trust back when you've been discovered that you lie, How do you win your own trust back to yourself? And I said, you know how sometimes it actually works a little bit? When you entered here to come and audition, you were telling yourself, I'm not going to be nervous, I'm not going to be nervous. And you got into the stage and you were nervous. And you know why? Somehow maybe your brain was telling you, Wena, Umaka, you are lying. I know you. Because you haven't reconciled yourself with yourself. But one last thing that I said to them, I said, but, you know, let's leave that. I said, here's one thing. We are in the business of lying truthfully. You know, I mean, because when you are acting, you are lying. I mean, you may play it truthfully, cry truthfully, but you're lying. You're lying. You know. And I said, now, if you are in the business of lying truthfully, how would you even know your truth if you don't actually look deep inside yourself? So that was that. I said, but now let's leave that. That is going to be something that. But here's something. I've got an agenda. And my agenda is to actually, I mean, I'm not doing this, you know, coming, training you because I'm a nice person. I'm not nice. I'm terrible, actually. And it's because I've got an agenda. And here's my agenda. And I gave it out, you know, like this. So my agenda is to make the best out of you. So what is your agenda? Oh, no, I also want to make the best out of myself. I said, we've got a deal. And we shook on it. 2 weeks, person come, and you know, that is now it's go high, and you know. And I would listen to the story. Listen, okay, oh, no, I hear you, man. Yeah. No, I hear you. But here's the thing. I can't help you there. But on what we shook on, that you want to make the best out of yourself, I'm here. When you are ready, and in an amazing way, that kept them on. So at the end of the day, one thing that we got to learn, I think as black people, is actually be truthful to ourselves, you know, and you can only but be able to be truthful if you are able to introspect. Navigating the acting, I wanted to understand your question, navigating the acting and directing. Here's one thing that I struggled with, I think, in my first production. And because I knew what I would do, and one thing that happened was I would actually show too much. You know what I mean? And I think what I realized was that I hadn't developed my own vocabulary to extract a performance out of an actor. You know what I mean? And that also is, you know, I think something that one has got to navigate. And I think one thing that I would even say to many of maybe the directors or film directors, that, you know, a good space to learn how to even develop that vocabulary of directing is actually by directing plays. Because at least when you're directing a play, you don't have the pressure of the sun, you know, of the weather. You are all in a closed space. So you have an opportunity to take time to find words of expressing yourself, you know, and how you would actually even extract a performance out of an actor. Because once you are actually now with the camera here, you've got marking, you've got the cameraman you've got to answer to, you've got sound that you've got to answer to, you've got crew to answer to, you know, I mean, you've got all these, and so the pressure is actually high. That is why I took time, you know, to actually get into directing, well, even for television and all that, because I've seen how much pressure these directors go through. And I said, I don't want that now, you know. And I focused on directing theater. And by directing theater, then that's when I developed my own vocabulary. You know, because at the end of the day, You know, like, you know, this, the quote that I used when I started, you know, with one of the, whether, I can't remember whether it was Jack Lemmon or Walter Matthau, who said, there are those directors who don't know about camera angles and the size and the lens sizes, but who know more about human behavior. You know what I mean? And I think one thing that is important, and I've seen actually also a shortcoming in some of the young directors that I have worked with, that what they lacked is actually the ability to communicate in shorthand what they want. Because you've got to develop a shorthand, but also you got to know what is it that you are looking out of an actor. You know what I mean? So there is a whole world to be learned. You know, I mean, you know, in the working, people like Marlon Brando, you know, they worked with the directors who Elia Kazan, you know, and those directors somehow they had started by directing plays first, you know, and I think theater also is a very good ground, you know, to find your own voice and to develop your own technique. I mean, when I was explaining the whole the observation and technique and creativity, I didn't go into how you even develop your technique, because by observing yourself, you actually now end up developing a technique on how to get around your performance, you know, and it all has to start with observation. And then after that, after observing life outside, you know, as an actor or as a writer, you know, basically now that's where your creativity comes in. You know, as an actor, for instance, if you observe life around, you're supposed to play a pastor, and you have observed Bobushiri, Bo, Zondo, Bomboro, and all that. So when you're going to play a part, you know, because you're not going to go and start trying to invent a Muruti. You know what I mean? You actually can invent a Muruti. I've said, I like what Boro does when he does this. I like what Mbushiri does when he does this. You see, now that's how you actually even now begin to craft and create your character. And I've seen sometimes actors, and it has to do with this thing, yeah, getting into character, and you find a person is going into their own way, you know, like, you know, and they're trying to pull up a performance of some sorts. And you can see, you know, Mutwa is there and we stay. You know what I mean? And life is not like that. Life is so simple. You know, and it is actually beautiful in its simplicity. You know what I mean? So basically, I would say, you know, I learned, you know, I kind of developed my own vocabulary, you know, earlier on, and then now I know exactly how to, you know, push somebody towards a performance. You know, I do draw, I think, from my own personal experience, you know, but, you know, it also has to do with observing life and developing your own vocabulary. And Bunny once said, if you think you've understood something, until you can express it in your own words, you haven't yet understood it. Okay, thanks.
Well, that was powerful, wasn't it? Yes. It was. You know, one man said, you can go to school and get the academic, and then you can have your own life and learn what you can through your own experiences. But then you can go and sit under a wisdom, a fountain, where another person has gone through life and they can give you wisdom. This you won't get in any book. And what you've received today is wisdom. What you've received today is an addition of a book that he has not even written, if he is planning to write a book.
I'm planning to write an acting book, by the way.
So what you've received today is very rare, and I hope that you take it and you treasure it. because it is what you may need in your future. It could be an answer that you've been praying for. It could be that niche to say, this thing of getting into character is not talking to me. So you've received something valuable today. And I hope that you are able to take this knowledge, and we hope to hear feedback on how this has enriched you as a GFC, because this is our first. And as our first, we want to know how has this impacted you beyond today. With that said, there was a question to say, GFC, what are you doing in the township? Because I'm always told there's no rural Gauteng. But in the township or the more disadvantaged areas of Gauteng. So as a GFC, we enter into partnerships. We don't recreate what is being done. But what we do is partner with entities like Bontate Sello, who already have programs. For example, he's indicated he does have an incubation program. So we work with a number of these. We also fund master classes, which really are for the people who may not have money to get into universities, but need that raw skills. And we always have all this information on our websites where we're calling people to sign up, be it animation, be it script writing, be it directing, be it mentorship. So I would really advise that do engage with us on that platform so that we can use your platform to spread the news as far and wide. And our approach into funding as well is we do look into the 5 corridors of Gauteng. It's one of the things that we are very deliberate about. So do put in your funding. We do make sure that we cater for all equally. One of the things that we've done this year, and one of the things that I was very deliberate about, is how do we go get that first-time filmmaker? So we are funding for the first time some of the first-time filmmakers, because we all come under an umbrella where we say we are funding emerging. But a lot of people emerge. But there are few first-timers. So we are very deliberate on first-timers, and we're very deliberate on youth. There was a comment to say filming starts now. You hone your skills now. So please do participate in the various activations, do participate when we do call, but also partner with some of the existing filmmakers, because this is another way of growing. We will be launching what we call our shadowing program, where we will allow you to go and shadow the likes of Bontate Sello for at least 4 weeks, for you to say, I've studied, but how do I get the experience? This is outside the internships and other fields and ways in which we work. So with that, I hope that I have answered all the questions. Thank you very much, TUT, for accommodating us today, and also for you guys for taking in what we had to offer as we close the Youth Month. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. As we come to the end of our program, because we are ending at 2. Oh, okay. Can we take one more question, guys? Is it okay? Is it all right? Okay, we just have one that we didn't see. Where is Lihle? Lihle, the mic?
It's fine.
Oh, okay.
I would like to thank you so much for the masterclass, sir. Most of these are my first year directing and writing students, and I'm so happy that you came. And you've had such a wonderful masterclass. So I just want to say, you've got enough to think about. So I'll see you next semester. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Wow. Okay, you guys have just been like, now that your ma'am speaks, it's like, yeah. Wow, ma'am, you definitely doing something right with your students. Yeah, that's a score. That's a big one. Thank you so much, guys. We have come to the end of our program. Tabang is trying to make his way here, but we've said, we're really working with time. And also, it's not the end. We will be back here. In fact, what I want to ask is, please make sure that you've registered and you've put your correct details on the registration list so that we can add you to the film club. Please make sure that you're following us on your Facebook and your Insta. It would be nice if you don't always also have to wait for GFC to make the initiative. If you've organized yourself and you've got a free lesson on whichever day or a free Friday afternoon, you want to organize something, or you want us to come, you can invite us, whenever that is suitable for you, and we can come. I think what would be great is for us to just take you through the application process, because believe it or not, I don't think we struggled to get applicants from Tshwane in this round. Meg, you were out when I introduced you, but Meg Mogoba is our head of industry support and development. He's the one that's responsible for the work that even the last film club, the last workshop that we hosted, he was hosting it. And you just invite him, you invite me, the CEO, if she's available, she'll come. We'll bring whoever we can so that we can assist you. We're struggling to get applicants from Tshwane. And also, like I said, please follow us, because a lot of our announcements, we do them on Facebook and Instagram. So please, please, please. We are hoping next time we'll use a bigger venue. Due to COVID, we had to, be cautious of the seatings, because although the national level has been dropped, the university has not yet dropped. So we still are complying with the university rules. And this is the only room we could get and the capacity we could fill. On your way out, please... Okay, I just want to address the theatre thing, please. Just so you know, the reason why we also, as much as we film, we also touch on theatre is because Ntatemak has already spoken at length about it. We believe that it's a good starting point. And also, I'm negotiating with the likes of Bontate Sello that we need to also take theatre to the screen. And it's a debate that we've had, him and I. But I do feel that taking theatre to the screen will make it more accessible for more people. On your way out, please do collect a goodie bag. We have some goodie bags for you. Mzwa, I'm not sure what you're handing out. Okay, I think they should be in those bags there, Mzwa. Just put them in those bags there, because on their way out, they'll collect the bags. So on your way out, please just collect a goodie bag. There's a couple of things in it that I'm interested in, but not so much interested in. This is what I want to interest you guys in. You'll find there's a booklet that looks like this. Please go through it thoroughly.